live. Let me just mute it on the other end. Make sure that it doesn't. So we are starting a little earlier today. Hang on. I don't see it. There's always a 30-second delay. Okay. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my regular 8:30, well, not 8:30, but welcome to my regular Wednesday night live stream. Today I have the illustrious and very well-known Dr. Anthony Dillon. Thank you so much for coming on my show today. I appreciate it. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
That's good. I'm really pleased. I've actually seen you out and about before.
Yes, at some libertarian conference.
Correct? The Friedman Conference?
Yes.
Yeah. I've seen you, but I was like, who is that guy? Because I was like, I knew I'd seen you before, and then in your profile photo, in your background, I see you're sitting. Daisy Cousins is behind you, and I'm like, oh, there we go, all the same circles.
Lovely Daisy.
Yeah, she's lovely. I've actually had the pleasure of interviewing her myself as well. Yeah, but anyway, I'm extremely pleased to have you on today, and I think we have a myriad of discussions. But I want to start. Yes, I've started early tonight, everyone, because I'm just referring to the chat. I've started a little bit earlier because everyone has, for some reason, taken my Wednesday, and so I'm trying to please everyone. Anyway, thanks for the compliments on the hair, by the way, everyone. Okay, and the insults, I'll take them as well. So something that you wrote that I actually really liked, it's a quote, and I thought it was a good way we can start the interview. The quote is, "There is a class of coloured people who make a business of keeping the troubles, the wrongs, and the hardships of the Negro race before the public. Having learned that they are able to make a living out of their troubles, they have grown into the settled habit of advertising their wrongs, partly because they want sympathy and partly because it pays. Some of these people do not want the Negro to lose his grievances because they do not want to lose their jobs." And that is a quote by T. Washington that you wrote into an article that you wrote, correct?
Booker T. Washington.
Yes, exactly. Sorry, that's from what I just read. So I think it's very interesting that we've now come to a stage in our human society where people, particularly people of color, like to be the victim and like to use their minority points. What do you think it is that has stirred this victim mentality to be something worth adulation?
Okay, well, it's not just in black people, it's a lot of minority groups. But,
I'm Latina, and the Latinos in America do it too, but I was just reading that quote. Yeah.
Buenas noches. ¿Tú hablas español?
Sí.
No? Oh, yo también. There's great power in being the victim, in playing the victim. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
When you're the victim, you can silence people, you can get them to apologize, you can get them to tiptoe around you,
Mm-hmm.
you can stop them from disagreeing with you. So that there's great power in playing that role. And we, as a society, need to be very careful and sort out the legitimate victims from the counterfeit victims. And in Aboriginal affairs, I do that. I acknowledge that there are many Aboriginal people who are genuinely suffering. They're the real victims. Okay, they live in appalling conditions. They don't have access to fresh food like we do. Then you have the counterfeit victims who just like to play victim and tell you that they're suffering from colonisation or Australia Day celebrations or whatever. They lead a good life. They know where their next meal's coming from. They have jobs, but they love playing. And it's rewarding.
Well, I think part of it comes from the left, and the left is full of white people and all different kinds of people who sort of like kind of almost treats them like a dog. It's like, oh, here you go. There you go. It's like what Hillary Clinton was doing to the African Americans when she was trying to get them to vote for her. It's kind of like, there you go, you poor thing. You can't make it on your own. You need help, and government is going to help you. You know, you can't make it on your own at all.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it's quite frustrating,
Yeah.
and it, it's obviously Latinos do it. And in America, a Latino would be a person of color, but I don't really know the correct terms here in Australia. But how do you identify? Do you personally consider yourself Aboriginal, or because so many Aboriginal people completely neglect their white heritage? It's like it's like, well, you're part white. Be proud of that too. What's wrong with being
Hmm.
proud of that too?
Exactly. That's why I call myself part Aboriginal.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I do that for two reasons. One, it's the truth. And second, it annoys the lefties
Good.
saying that I'm part
That's
Aboriginal.
the best.
I like to annoy them.
Same.
Um, and, coming back to what you said about, the white heritage, well, I am just as proud of my mother's heritage, who's
Good.
English, as I am of my father's heritage.
And is
And
he
both those ancestries make up who I am. So why would
absolutely
I want to deny one half of who I am?
my point exactly?
Hmm.
Yeah, and so like, have you seen Hack Live? Have you ever watched that show?
No.
Well, on that show, there's this Aboriginal girl who went up against Blair Cottrell, and she was blonde, and she was actually very pretty, a very pretty girl, but she completely denied her white heritage, and she looked only a quarter Aboriginal, like hardly, but she came from a different group of. She was saying she came from the Warraguju country. I forget the wording, so I don't want to
Yeah.
disrespect, but it was blatantly obvious that she was a lefty and she was all about treaties and all that kind of stuff. And what are your opinions on that, on these Aboriginal people who have been fed this line, I suppose?
Yeah. Okay. Well, a couple of things you've touched on, which I'll elaborate on.
Go ahead.
Those with part or minimal Aboriginal ancestry who just want to play the game and they make up this rule. They say you're either Aboriginal or you're not.
Ugh.
That's their opinion. That's not a law. It's not a truth. It's simply their opinion.
Hmm.
And then following on with no, also just one other point on that.
Yeah.
I I hope this. I'll give you an analogy. If you walked into a room, or if we both walked into a room, and there were some people there, some were Aboriginal and some were, say, European, whatever, and if we say totally ignored the Aboriginal people and only
Yeah.
spoke to people there, that would be, racist. Likely be racist if you ignored the Aboriginal people purely because they were Aboriginal and only wanted to speak with the European. That's a good example of being racist. Now,
Yes.
I'm using that as an analogy for this. If a person has multiple ancestries,
Like me.
yeah, but they only acknowledge one of those ancestries, that's a form of what I call ancestral racism. If you're neglecting, ignoring the other ones, and you're only holding on to one, that's an ancestral racism. Does that make sense?
That does make sense, but you're saying that's is this your theory, or are you saying that that's what they've been
No,
fed?
it's just an analogy I use. That if you only acknowledge one of your ancestries, your 16 great great grandparents, if you, let's suppose one of them was Aboriginal, and that's the only one you
Naive
acknowledged,
story.
and you forgot the rest, that's saying that the others aren't worth anything.
Yes, well, it kind of is. It's like when people say to me, um, "Are you Colombian, or are you Spanish, or are you Australian?" And I'm like, "Well, my blood is not Australian. That's a fact. But I my concerns are Australian. I'm talking to Anthony Dillon. I've spoken to Mark Latham. Like, my concerns are clearly Aussie, but I'm not like
Mm,
as Australian as you. I don't have the Aboriginal heritage to back it up, or
mm,
the First Fleet heritage to back it up. But
mm.
it's it's too much about identity today. It's kind of hard to fit in to a
Yeah,
particular. Yeah.
yeah. So in summary, yeah, I'm an Aussie, but I acknowledge all my ancestries.
As we
Primarily
should.
from my mother and my father, and they just make up who I am. So
And how did you get into your line of study? You're a lecturer at the Australian Catholic University, is that correct? Is that the right
Yes,
university? Yeah.
yes. Just, I was always academically inclined, I guess. When
Well
I come
done.
to when I come to Sydney about 16 years ago, I got a job at Sydney University in health sciences, and I've just been sort of circulating ever since. So it's a hard life, but it can be a rewarding life. So that's one part of my life, and I have other things on the side.
And
So,
how did you, why the Australian Catholic University? Do you lean Catholic? Or is that
no,
just the side?
no, I'm not Catholic, and I know very few Catholic co-workers
Oh, okay.
at the university. So it was just the people I was with. We were at another university, and we were a better fit for the Australian Catholic University with a focus on community mindedness and that sort of thing. So,
Mm. And is your how Aboriginal are you, if that's okay to ask? Like, is your father half full? Are you a quarter? Are you half? Like,
oh look, my father would be very close to full Aboriginal.
oh, okay. Yeah.
Um, Definitely his mother, beautiful woman, very most peaceful woman I've ever met, full blood Aboriginal woman, and
Hmm.
his father was pretty much Aboriginal as well. And
Cool.
then mum's purely English.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
how was your upbringing in terms of identity, as we're discussing identity? Like, was that difficult? Or how people go, oh, the tragic life of the mulatto child, the half black, half white, or was it relatively okay?
It was it was just very okay. It was very ordinary in many ways. Um, I was very lucky. I had two great extended families who
Uh-huh.
just treated me as Anthony. There wasn't different rules for the Aboriginal family and another set for the non-Aboriginal family. It was just they were great role models, uncles and
Yeah.
aunties and cousins, who all loved me. And I guess very importantly, on both sides, with the uncles and aunties, um, great workers, people who just got out there and worked. And so they set really good examples for me. So, I just knew from a young age, having parents who worked, but seeing uncles and aunties on both sides of the family work and lead good lives too. Be good moral citizens. So I was blessed. I had good examples set for me.
Oh, that's really good. So,
Good way to start life. It's a good way to start
it,
life.
that's really good. So, like, when you hear Aboriginals or lefties complaining that your community, generally speaking, deserves special privileges and all that kind of stuff, do you find that ridiculous, or do you understand it because some of them are, I suppose, tribal in certain ways and maybe do need the help, or do you not find that excuse valid because you've been able to take advantage of every single opportunity that's come your way and work for it?
Uh, Look, within the Aboriginal population, they're a very diverse, heterogeneous um, group of people, just like in the non-Aboriginal sector, very mixed, very heterogeneous. Um, so within the Aboriginal population, there's many who are leading a life just like me. They sleep in a nice home. They know where the next meal's coming from. They can go out for dinner, whatever. They've got a safe environment. Then at the other end of the spectrum, which is often not always, but often in remote communities, you have those Aboriginal people who are not doing very well at all.
Mm,
And they're the ones whom we should be focusing more attention on. And I wouldn't call it special privileges. I would call it giving a hand up
okay.
because they live in conditions where they lack a lot of the things that we take
Sure.
for granted.
Sure. Well, that's fair. So, why is it then, do you think, so special privileges might not be the right word, but it wasn't too long ago that what's her name? Her name Carrie Ann Kennelly. Um, yeah, it wasn't too long ago that she mentioned that Aboriginal communities have fathers who are sexually molesting their children, and Jacinta Price also corroborates this as an unfortunate consistent problem. why do we get in trouble for stating facts? What's
Yeah.
up with that?
Yes. Good question. Well, the best data we have tells us that there seems to be a problem
Mm-hmm.
in Aboriginal communities where the rate of abuse and neglect of children is higher than what it is in the
Yeah.
general population. Now, I guess the
Mm.
problem is, well, first of all, let me just give you a quick example. I'm a Queenslander, right?
Yeah.
But I don't build my identity around being Queensland. I'm also a male, but I don't build my whole life around being male. So
Exactly.
therefore, if you were to criticise males and talk about um, there's a high rate of crime or sexual abuse amongst sexual perpetrators, sexual abuse, perpetrating crimes amongst males, I don't have a problem hearing that. If you were to tell me, paint a bad picture of Queensland for some reason, if it's a fact, I don't have a problem with that. Now, when it comes to the Aboriginal population, because so many of them, again, mostly the city folk, the left-leaning ones, they build their life around being Aboriginal. Therefore, if they hear anything bad, they take it so personally. Whereas, like I was saying, I wouldn't care if you were to criticise even members of my family. Okay, let's suppose there were some members of my family doing some bad stuff. I wouldn't be in denial. I wouldn't be defensive. I would agree with you and say, "Yep, that's bad."
Mm-hmm.
Simply because I do not build my whole life around my family name or the city I was born in or where I was raised or anything like that. But for those who build their whole life, their whole identity around being Aboriginal, well, then of course, if they hear something bad, then they're going to object to it strongly. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
I used to be that way. As a Christian, I was that way with my own collective, and then as a Latina, I did that when I was
Mm,
younger. But then when I became red pilled, I suppose you could say, um, I didn't do that anymore. I don't think as a collective anymore.
mm,
I don't think someone's something against the Jews, I have to hate, or because I'm Latina or because I'm a woman, I don't collectivize anymore. I used to. So
mm.
yeah, it takes getting used to. It takes time. I understand why people do it, but it's a good habit to get out of.
Yeah. You're an individual. I'm an individual.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. No, this is very true. Well, part of the article that you sent me has lots of really interesting facts. One of the ones that I really found completely inspired was when you said, I have also discussed other controversial ideas like Aboriginal people are not victims of colonization, nor are they victims of racism, and that healing comes from forgiveness and not receiving a forced apology. Now, it was under Kevin Rudd, wasn't it, that the Aboriginals had the sorry parade march, whatever the word is. What did you
Yeah.
think of that at the time it was happening?
Oh, look, I didn't mind it. There's nothing wrong with offering an apology,
Sure.
but so long as it's not forced out of someone. The problem I
Mm-hmm.
have with that is when you tell people that until you hear the apology, you're going to be suffering, and to hear that apology is going to be your savior. So, for
Yeah.
example, if you were to step on my toe as you walked out of the room,
Mm-hmm.
it would hurt my foot. And if you turned around and said sorry, that would be nice. But if you didn't, it doesn't mean I'm going to suffer. Okay, unless of course I need you to apologise. And if I need you to apologise, well, then I will continue to suffer. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes. So
It's like mutual friend.
when you tell people that they can't heal, they can't move forward until they get an apology or some acknowledgement, you're keeping them down. So I don't oppose the apology. I just oppose the nonsense that it's a necessary condition for them to heal and move forward.
What if I said to you right now that I do oppose the apology?
Yeah, I'd respect your right to have that belief.
Do you know why? Do you want to tell you why?
Sure.
Because I try to be as politically consistent, as thought consistent as possible, and it's difficult to do. But when it comes to, for example, slavery in America, something that bothers me is that African Americans today are angry at all white people for the few white people that actually owned black people 400 years ago.
Hmm.
And so all white people today need to be sorry for something only a minority, a select minority did in the past.
Yeah.
So my sort of frustration comes from apologizing for something that happened in the past for today. It doesn't make sense
Sure.
to me. And it's like it's not just the African Americans that do it with the white people. It happens like I feel like it happens here in Australia with the Indigenous population to the white people. Um, and then it happens with I suppose Jewish people and uh I don't know, I forgot there was I forgot the dynamic there, but it does happen, and it's quite. It doesn't make sense to me. You are not a product of what of your ancestors. You are a product of. I mean, you are genetically, but you are not their crimes. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure, sure.
Why?
Yeah, look, I'm not a big fan of collective retrospective apologies.
Mm,
But again, if people want to do it, that's their business.
yeah.
Uh, just don't force it. Yeah.
No, no, that's completely understandable. I was just curious what your thoughts were because I found it at the time. I thought it was great. I'm like, oh wow, Kevin Rudd is so amazing, and I thought it was really great. But the more I grow in my political evolution, the more I see these things as a bit silly. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. And coming back to what I said before too, healing comes from forgiveness, not
Mm-hmm.
getting an apology.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, yeah. What are your thoughts on the concept of the lost generation, and how accurate do you find that to be in history? Um, Yeah, because I mean, I watched Rabbit Proof Fans like everyone else, but how much of that is perpetuated drama, and how much of it is completely accurate? Do you know what I mean by that?
okay, I think you mean the stolen generations, not lost generation.
Solid, sorry.
Mm. You didn't do your research.
No,
Oh, look,
I didn't. I apologize.
it's it's one of those terms where I think it often gets misused. It gets a bit stretched.
I think so.
Um, so an Aboriginal person, or someone with some Aboriginal ancestry, for whatever reason, wasn't raised um, by their parent, or maybe even chose to um, move away, or whatever, and it's very easy to take on that identity of, oh, I'm a stolen generations member. Now, a few years ago, I was involved with this group here in Sydney, and I'd visit there. They would hold meetings, and over a few months, I met three of them, not all at one time, but over several months. They all claimed to be members of the stolen generation, and they introduced
Yeah,
themselves as that. And I'd have a conversation with them, just general chit chat, and I'd ask them about it. I said, do you mind talking about it? They said, no, not at all. And when they told me about it, it wasn't this being ripped out of their mother's arms or anything like that. It was a story of dad died, mum couldn't um, look after us, so we went and lived with an auntie or something like that. Um, something similar. Um, and so that's what I mean when I say the term gets a bit stretched. Um,
yeah,
it's like the term racism. It's been stretched so much that it's lost its meaning. There are true proper examples of racism, but often
hmm
when a person says this is racist, um, it takes quite a stretch to see any racism.
yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
All right, well, let's see if there are any genuine questions. Some people don't always ask genuine questions. Um, Can Aboriginal healing come from privileged white people virtue signaling?
No, not really. No. It makes the virtue signaler feel good for a short while. But healing comes from forgiveness and taking some responsibility. So, if I'm riding my bike down the street and you come past in your car and knock me on the ground,
Mm,
I could sit there and grunt and cry and demand that you come back, but you may not. Okay. So I've got to think, okay, she's gone.
Mhm.
She's not coming back. What can I do now? If I'm able to walk, I'll get up and walk to the doctors. If I can't, I'll get someone to help me. But I've got to make this decision. She's not coming back. What can I do now to make my life better? And
Yeah.
when a person decides that, there's always someone there to help them. You know, everyone has got someone who can help them. So,
Here's one from Jason. Neil, put your question back up. I don't know what you're talking about. Anthony, do you believe in the concept of transgenerational trauma?
short answer, because it's so ill defined, I would say no. Because we are never ever victims of our past, only ever victims of our view of the past. And the reality is, I know so many people, Aboriginal people, and also people of other ethnicities whose their parents had, suffered, and their grandparents suffered a lot too, and they're doing okay. They're doing quite well. So this whole idea of that, trauma is passed down through the genes and there's no escaping it is ridiculous. In
I agree.
extreme cases, there may be a small effect passed down, but generally speaking, there's just too many exceptions to the rule. Now, certainly, if you've come from a situation where you lived in a home and you saw violence was normal, getting drunk was normal, it wouldn't be unreasonable to expect, well, you're probably going to possibly lead a similar life yourself.
Mhm.
But again, there are so many exceptions to that where people have come from terrible circumstances and they decided, after someone may have helped them, they decided, I'm going to do better than that. I'm going to rise above that. I'm not going to be the way my parents and my grandparents were. I can do better. So,
Exactly. It's about self-will.
yeah. So, it's that term transgenerational trauma is such a cop out. People just use it so conveniently. And again,
Mhm.
I say to the people who use it, well, then how come there are so many exceptions to it?
Yes, exactly right. What is your political slant? Left leaning, right leaning? I was
Oh,
gonna
look,
ask that anyway, but they've done it.
yeah, look, I think it's not something I think about, but and every time I think I've understood what left means and what right means,
It keeps changing.
some counter example comes along and proves me wrong. But I would
Mhm.
say, look, generally right leaning. Um, so, I definitely believe in, if you disagree with someone, have a debate with them, discussion. Don't just silence them, which is a trick of the left. Primarily the left will shut you down, block you on social
Absolutely.
media. Um, Rather than just debate an issue with you, they'll try and dig up something from the past and hold you guilty, that sort of thing. So, if you were to put me in a camp, I think it would be the right leaning camp.
Yeah. Good camp.
Yeah.
Let me have a look. There was a good one here. Do you How do you feel about the socialists using your people for political gains?
I don't like, whatever you call them, I don't like anyone using Aboriginal people or anyone else for that matter for political gains, especially if that's your primary motive. Now, if you are genuinely setting out to help some people, and there's some advantage in it, you get a promotion at work or whatever, that's fine. But so long as that's not your primary motive, if it's coming from the heart, where you think I just want to help people, um, well, that's what I prefer to see. But using people, no, definitely not.
Yeah. No, I agree. I
You
saw
get
recently you were
you get so
so
many people, the latte slippers sippers who just like to sit there in their comfortable lounges and make statements like, "Oh, the poor Aboriginal people, we've got to do better," or "Stop the racism," or something like that. Yeah, and they've really done nothing. Um,
mm,
they've just been able to use the Aboriginal people to make themselves look holy.
yeah. Well, were you on Sky News discussing Ayers Rock?
Look, I was on there, and there was someone else on there who was discussing it more than me. But As for my opinion, look, it's happened. So it's not something I was in favour on, but neither did I. I wasn't going to protest against them closing it. But I would not be surprised if in a couple of years it opens again. So it's closed. Get over it. Respect their right to do that, but let's not be surprised if they open it again soon.
Mm. Wait, so sorry. Your thoughts on Ayers Rock, is that pretty much what you think, or?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So, what about the term Uluru? Like, do you think we must use Uluru, or like, does it not really matter? Because I say both, to be honest. I just sometimes catch myself saying Ayers Rock, or I catch myself saying Uluru. It's like Bombay or Pompeii. Like, I don't.
Well, first of all, the
Why?
interesting thing is it's not pronounced. The correct pronunciation is not Uluru. It's more Uluru. That's how it should be pronounced. So all those who say Uluru, they're pronouncing it wrong. But put that aside, I was up at the Rock, Ayers Rock, Uluru, whatever you want to call it, a couple of years ago, and I was also in Alice Springs,
Oh, okay,
and I
cool. I've never
was
been
with a
there.
lot of Aboriginal people, and most of them said Ayers Rock or the Rock. Yeah, so many Aboriginal people up there will say Ayers Rock. It's only when you come into the capital cities on the coast and down south where they try, they're looking for something to whinge about and be politically correct about.
Mhm.
So yeah, like all I can say is many Aboriginal people I've met are happy to call it the Rock or Ayers Rock.
Yeah, I don't think, to be honest, I highly doubt there are Aboriginals out there making a fight about the terms. Like, people have been using the term Ayers Rock for years. I don't understand how that could become a fight now.
No, exactly. It's just another excuse to play games.
Absolutely. Port from Cobb asks, Dr. Anthony, as a Catholic, I know you're not a Catholic. I don't think he was watching when you stated that earlier, that you're not Catholic. But his question is, as a Catholic, what are your views on the Reformation and was it justified? Do you want to
Yeah.
answer that, or unrelated?
What is it? Yeah, no, I'll pass on that one because I'm not Catholic. So I'll just pass.
Okay. Cool. Let's get it to. There were some other good questions, I thought. Oh, actually, I have my own question regarding Australia Day. What are your thoughts? Because Jacinta Price has been at the front of this, like one of the only Indigenous faces saying it's fine. Let's keep celebrating it. Have you been one of those as well? I'm not really aware.
I've been saying it for a lot longer.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And I was just looking the other day, and I think my first article on that would have been 10 years ago. I wrote for the ABC
Oh,
Drum back in the
okay.
day, back in the days when the ABC were a little bit better,
Yeah,
and they'd
that's
let
hard
people
to
like
believe.
me, they'd let people like me write for them.
Yeah.
And again, it's just another big con job. It's just another excuse, and they'll say ridiculous things like, no pride in genocide, celebrating genocide. I have not met one person. I've not been to one Australia Day party where people are celebrating genocide. They're
Yes, it's so.
celebrating the great country Australia is, and they're just having a barbecue and throwing the frisbee. So what's wrong
Maybe
with
the
that?
frisbee represents genocide.
Again, it's just another power play. People trying to play the victim. Oh, we're so upset because celebrations happen on that day. Uh, Absolute nonsense.
Definitely. Bieber Anti-Bullying wants to know if there are any Aboriginal stories about the pygmies.
Um, Look, you hear about that, and it's not a topic which I follow up on. So it's not that's of interest to me.
Oh, you don't find it interesting that there were people here at the same time as you guys who were little and midget versions of yourselves?
Yeah, no, no. Yeah, I mean, there's always conflicting reports about it too, and it's just something I don't want to get bogged down on.
Fair enough. No, that's completely. And it's really funny because not too long ago on my YouTube channel, I did interview a friend of mine. But before I interviewed that friend, I had already had an interest in the subject of giants, like giants that once roamed the earth.
Yep.
And this is unrelated to what we're talking. I'm aware, but they say anthropologists and honest archaeologists, not all acknowledge that every single tribal group of people can all recognize that at one stage there was a flood. So that sort of, I feel like, corroborates Noah's Ark. And all these same different tribes or groups of people who have an oral history also discuss giants. Do you know anything about that, or not at
No,
all?
what I would say is, though, although they might discuss giants,
Mm,
that could be literal, or it could possibly or more likely be a metaphor.
it could be.
Yeah.
But I like to think it's literal because, like,
Okay.
that's
I
cool.
just think there's great
That's
there's great
crazy.
value there's great value in metaphors and fables and that sort of thing, because
That's very
they contain deep truths if you look beyond the literal. That's my.
yes. But do you personally, are you personally a man of faith?
Oh, I think so. I think so. I think the Bible's a great book of inspiration, but it can also be misused.
Absolutely.
Um,
This is
yeah,
very true.
yeah.
You're not wrong. Dangerous Spaces. Hi, welcome to my channel. You're new. What campus is Dr. Anthony from? I was at one of the ACU campuses and he looks kind of familiar. You in New South Wales, right?
Yes, yes. I'm at the North Sydney campus. I was previously at the Strathfield campus.
Cool. And what do you specifically teach?
Okay, well, I'm full-time research, so I don't do much teaching
Oh.
apart from guest lectures around the place. But I work in I guess, where education, psychology, and Aboriginal wellbeing intersect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
That's cool. I think that's really fascinating. I've always liked the concept of being a lecturer. I don't know what the hell I'd lecture about, but I mean, if I had gone out of my way and been as forthright as yourself and people who get uh um most people who get an education to be a lecturer, I think that's really inspirational. And I think and also what I don't like is that today the left has dominated most of the judicial system and now the education system. So I think it's good to have level-headed individuals like yourselves in universities. So I think kudos to you.
thank you. And there are a few of us like that out there, so it's
Yes,
good.
we we need more of you. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Which tribe was your father from, Anthony? Where
Uh,
were
um,
their ancestral lands?
on the Gold Coast, called Kumbermerri. So
Hmm.
Kumbermerri, Gold Coast, Queensland.
There you go. I hope that helps you.
APP.
APP, thank you, Australian Protectionist Party. Here's another question. Wow, I have a lot of people in the chat who I'm confused about where they came from. I'm saying don't celebrate it at the same time as the Indigenous got invaded. Do you feel like the Aboriginals were invaded by the British, or do you feel like is that an accurate statement? I know that's not a question, but how do you feel about comments like that?
Oh, look, the British come here and they did a lot of damage.
They absolutely
Um, yeah, there's no doubt about that. But again, nobody is celebrating that. So,
yeah.
and we can all look back and say, it was bad, and I don't know anyone who's in denial of that. So,
Yeah, so yeah, well, I think people assume that all the white people were just there to rape and pillage and plunder. Like,
yeah,
and I mean, they settled the land. The land, whether people like to acknowledge it or not, we now have an Australia with roads and with electricity and cars and with. Would we have had that if the Indigenous people had just remained on this continent and no Europeans colonized? Would we
yeah,
have what we have now?
no, very unlikely.
Very unlikely.
Yeah.
Question by my friend Benjamin. The Aboriginals have stories about a serpent that they worshipped. Can you expand on that and any similarity to the biblical accounts? Do you know anything about that?
Oh, look, no, I don't think it's similar to the biblical account. And yeah, it's not something I know a lot about, but the little I do know about it, no, it's not similar to the serpent in the Garden of Eden. No.
Mm, okay. Okay, my friend just donated $3 to insult me about my hair. They're used to seeing me with black hair, that's why. But I've
Oh.
been going through a really rough time this month, so I just wanted to do something different.
Me gusta tu pelo. I like your hair.
Sorry?
Me gusta tu pelo.
Oh, gracias!
De nada.
How did you learn that? Where did you learn
Uh,
your Spanish?
yeah, like I just here and there, bits and pieces.
Have you spent
Uh,
time in the US or in South America?
no, I haven't. I've holidayed in Miami, Florida, a few times.
Very, very Latino.
A huge Hispanic,
Mm.
and I think everyone should learn a second language.
Yes,
Um,
I'm very happy that I'm bilingual. Yeah.
yeah, so you Aussies who are just the Aussies who are just monolingual, get out there and learn a second language.
I agree. That's a fantastic thing to say.
Yeah.
Do you speak any of the tribal languages?
No, and very
No.
few do, comparatively
Okay.
speaking. No.
Yeah. Okay, so Jason Katungno. Oh wait, this isn't actually a question to you, but you might be able to hang on. Why are you allowing us? Okay, no, this isn't to you. This is the fight in the chat section. I'm sorry. I thought it was to you. Okay, let's have a look. If there are no more questions, I'll ask you a couple of questions again. I just don't want any of the people in the audience to miss their work lashes. No, okay, so there's no questions at the moment.
Well,
Um,
let me make a statement.
Go
So I
ahead.
try and in every discussion I have about Aboriginal issues, a key theme I try and work in is that I want people to know that the commonalities between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal people far outweigh any differences.
Oh yes,
Um,
of course.
yeah, yeah, and
I agree.
while there may be some differences, um, they're usually very superficial, minor. So we should be focusing on the commonalities and just recognize that we are all one. You know, so whether you're
Well,
Latino,
I mean, the
whether
commonalities is
you're,
that we all have a humanity,
yeah,
and we're all
yeah,
created in God.
yeah,
No
we have
matter
the
your,
same basic needs. We have the same basic needs.
we do. We all want to
Yeah.
be loved. We all want to be. Yeah, I agree with all of that. So Pissy Leaks Pete asks, what is your view that Andrew Bolt was sued in 2011 under the Racial Discrimination Act based on an article being Aboriginal in order to gain career, social, or other advantage? Bindi Chokka was part of that at the time, and she's actually apologized since then. What are your thoughts on it?
No, he shouldn't have been sued. They shouldn't have won.
Mm,
I mean, he
every
just stated what a lot of us, what a lot of us know, and what I've already discussed here. That people will use that Aboriginal status to their advantage,
mm-hmm.
um, and often to keep other Aboriginal people down. They love playing the part of gatekeeper,
Mm,
and people always, they'll bring up the fact that Andrew Bolt's racist against Aboriginal people, and I always say, can you please give an example of where he's been racist? And
exactly.
what they do is they bring up that court case. They go, there you go, and I say, yeah, but that still doesn't give any example. What actually was it that he said or did that
That was
was
an
racist?
ambush.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
um,
agree with you. What do you think about the result? What would be the result if we did change the date of Australia Day? In my opinion, the same voices would still look to be racially divisive.
yeah. Look, okay, very quickly. I'm not in favour of changing the date. I wouldn't strongly oppose if someone was to change it, but it's certainly not my recommendation. And yes, if we were to change it, well, first of all, what day would you choose? And someone will always find something wrong with the new day that you choose.
Mm-hmm.
And if you did change it, there'd be other things to whinge about. But more importantly, and I hope I can explain this clearly, and I've tried to explain it before, if you were to change it on the grounds that it's upsetting Aboriginal people, or it's hurting them, or it's oppressing them, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, if you were to change it, you would actually validate the myth that they're suffering.
Yeah,
You would
that's
think,
very
well,
true.
I would think, gee, I really must be suffering, or else the government wouldn't have changed the date. So for that reason alone, I oppose changing it because it sends the wrong message that you were suffering because of a date.
And it's also insulting to today. If you think about it, the Aboriginals are complaining about, or not the Aboriginals, I should say the Aboriginals and the white leftists, the
Yeah.
virtue signalers who are on their side because they're so kind and great. These particular people are not realizing that them complaining so much about being left out or about being a minority or whatever the complaint specifically is an insult to everything that they currently have. Because, like, don't they have affirmative action or their own? Don't we have an we have app study, but that's purely based on the fact that you are Aboriginal. I don't have Latino study. I don't get like extra privileges like that. Do you know what I mean? Like, do you know what I mean?
Well, more importantly, I think it's an insult to the many fine Aboriginal people today who
Sure,
proudly celebrate Australia Day. They're not upset by it.
sure. No, I agree with that too.
Yeah. So
That's very
be
true.
like them. Why can't they be like them?
Oh no, that's not it. No, exactly. Look, our mutual friend Dean McRae. Remember Dean?
Oh,
You saw him 2 weeks ago.
yeah, yeah. No, that's not on the cards. I don't think I have a face for national speaking tours. Someone like Jacinta
Oh, you
Price,
do.
much,
You're a handsome fella.
Jacinta much prettier to look at.
She's pretty.
She's got some really great lived experiences to talk about. So she does a better job, on the national speaking tour. I'm happy to come on to podcasts like this.
Oh, well, I'm so pleased to have you. I'm very thankful. I interviewed her on my channel about 6 months ago, just
Yeah,
into Pride. Yeah, and then I went to see her when I was briefly living in Sydney, which I'm now living in again, New South Wales. But I was briefly living in Sydney, and I went to see her speak. And honestly, it's very depressing. And then seeing all her Facebook statuses actually really depressed me. It seems to me like the Aboriginal community really is suffering, but it's the ones who, I don't know how to word this. It's the ones who are not taking advantage of the opportunities they could get if they went for them. Does that make sense?
kind of.
Yeah, it's like there's so much, like a lot of the people in Jacinta Price's life, from what I've seen online, are like a second cousin or a cousin who is dying or who is suffering or who's being molested. It's really sad. It's very
Yeah,
depressing. And
yeah,
she's such a strong figure. She's so incredible.
yeah. And often with like Jacinta's relatives, it's not them. It's they aren't keeping themselves down. Often there's a gatekeeper,
Well, I'm sure
uh,
that's true.
who's keeping them down. So
Yeah, well, every single time I read a sad status, I text her and I'm like, I'm sorry to hear about this. She's just like, thanks, dear. Because I don't know what else to do. I'm like, I can't just ignore that. It's such a strong thing she's written. Yeah.
yeah.
Does Anthony go on any song lines? I don't know what that means. What does that mean?
No, neither do I.
Oh,
Song
okay.
lines. I don't know.
I don't know. I thought it was an Aboriginal thing. Maybe not. We both don't understand it, so it's not anything. All right, let's go down and see if there are any great questions. Because I like the Okay, I can't see any questions. So, what are your thoughts personally on the way Australia is currently headed in terms of political correctness, in terms of the cultural change, and in terms of the elevation of minorities and their rights?
Well,
There's
I
a lot
think
there, so just go slow.
the political correctness does seem to be increasing and getting worse. But at the same time, I think there's a backlash amongst sensible thinking people out there who have had enough. Who don't like to be gagged, who don't like to be told they're racist. So I think they're starting to stand up for themselves. And they just need to be a bit careful, though, because once you've been gagged like that, you can sometimes strike back too hard. And,
Mm,
you'll say you can be a good person, but you'll strike back a bit hard. You'll say something that's a little bit close to the edge. And something, one of the wisest expressions or analogies I've ever heard was something Jacinta's father said to me. He's a white fella.
I know.
Um,
Yeah, I've seen him on SBS.
yeah, very knowledgeable man about Aboriginal culture, real Aboriginal culture. And he said, if you keep a lid on the pot long enough, don't be surprised if it boils over. So if, the people, the non-anti-PC people are gagged for too long, if they're criticised, if they're told they're racist, don't be surprised if sometimes a couple of them, not all of them, but a couple of them sometimes just overreact. So
Mm-hmm. No, that's true. Yeah, I saw him on an episode of, it was Insight on SBS. That was the first time I saw it was actually, sorry, this is just a tiny story. I'll let you answer that question in a second. This is just a tiny story. When I was on the boat, on the cruise at the Freedmen Conference with Jacinta Price, we were having a little boogie together. She and I were having a little dance, and then she showed me a photo of her mum and dad. I'm like, what? I said, I've seen them. I said, I've seen them on SBS. I said, I saw them on an episode of Insight. She goes, yeah, that's my mum and dad. I couldn't believe it that, like, she was them, and I had watched them on that show years earlier because they were talking about how difficult it is for Aboriginals to be given a piece of paper, I suppose, that proves that they're Aboriginal. I don't remember. And some Aboriginals were declined by other Aboriginals, even though it was obvious by looking at their face that they were Aboriginal, and they were declined the paper. And then Jacinta Price's mum was there as a sort of an elder that, like, people could turn to talk on the show. Did you know that?
I was on the show with her, and I was sitting
Oh,
right beside her.
were you? Oh, I
Yeah,
didn't know that. So you guys are like cousins.
yeah. Bess calls me her sister,
Oh, yeah?
and much to my annoyance, because she
Mm.
likes to be a pain sometimes, Jacinta calls me uncle, and I say, "Do not call me uncle," but she
She's
doesn't.
naughty.
Yeah.
That's funny. What do you have anything to say about that episode that I saw, which is still up on YouTube, about why Aboriginals are so unusual or so selective about who they give that paper to? I know I'm not using the right terms, and I apologize.
Yeah, look, I'll just say it's quite a touchy, fiery topic. We could do a whole session on
Okay,
that. So,
then let's leave it.
so shall I answer
All
that
right,
question? That's
go ahead.
came
Ask the
from
question.
yeah. So Jason asked, what do you think needs to happen to pull people out of socioeconomic problems? Well, I guess he and a lot of other people probably know the answer to that is we've got to get people into jobs. And there's a couple of things, barriers there to getting those Aboriginal people who have been, long-term unemployed. First of all,
Mhm.
they've got to be in areas where there are jobs, okay,
Yes.
where there's jobs available. Now, sometimes there's not. And if there's not, then government need to make a tough decision,
Hmm.
do we move the people on, put them in another place where they can be trained and be given jobs?
Hmm.
Um, the other thing, and Jacinta knows this better than me, a lot better than me, is sometimes for those Indigenous people who still maintain traditional values and customs,
Hmm.
the concept of sharing can be a deterrent to getting a job. So why would you bother getting a job if every payday all your family are going to come around and want their share of the pay packet? So overcoming those sorts of barriers is a problem.
Definitely.
Um, so basically, you've got to, um, if there's no jobs where the people are, the people have got to go where the jobs are. And I can remember Stan Grant talking about when he was a kid, his father would move them around wherever they could get work.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, for these communities, I'm all for investing millions if you could get enterprise up and running. And someone like Warren Mundine would be a good person, a good mentor to go to these communities.
I'm trying to
Um,
get Warren Mundine on my channel. I've been
yeah,
working on.
yeah.
You can have,
He's a good one to talk to about
yeah.
employment.
Well, get
Um,
him on my channel. Hook me up.
okay, I'll see what I can do.
Thank you.
So yeah, if there's jobs there, great. If you need some government investment, great, do that. Train the people, mentor them, get them job ready, do that. So the people have got to be in jobs. If there's no jobs in those communities, and they're just not sustainable, then you have to move the people on to where there can be
Hmm.
employment employment opportunities. And not only will you get them out of, poor socioeconomic status, but a whole host of other problems will start to vanish as well.
Mm.
Violence, child abuse, and that sort of thing. So when adults are working, that contributes to good self-esteem and pride.
Mhm.
When the adults are working, kids then know that they've got to go to school because they know that school leads to a job. So
Yes. Do you see that question there by Senator Slayer? How do you
yeah,
feel? Yeah.
about the guy operating the Aboriginal flag. Should look, I don't know much about that. I've forgotten that story. So I'll pass on that one. Should Aboriginal people get a new flag? Not unless they want one. It's a very distinctive flag. So the next question there.
Yeah. Sorry. Do you want me to read it, or do you want to read it?
Oh, what do you think is the agenda of the ABC? They like to play identity politics. They like to promote victimhood, and when you promote victimhood, that means there's always an opportunity for them to play rescuer. So they love the victimhood narrative, so that they can then play um, the rescuer.
Mm.
Um,
Did you know that you're talking to Australia's biggest racist? Me.
maybe Bogan Slayer can give some examples of where I've been racist. I suspect we'll be waiting for a long time.
Thanks. Well, I mean, like,
Oh,
yeah, I'm
he's hurt
so
my
racist.
feelings.
I have an Aboriginal guy on my channel.
He called me a racist. He's hurt my feelings. I'm going to need counselling after this interview. I have to go find my safe space.
Yeah, exactly right. So when did you how long have you been in New South Wales? Like you were born and raised in Queensland. What made was it just the job that led you here?
Yeah, just various circumstances led me down here to Sydney. Got a good job. I'm still very much a Brisbane boy. My heart's in Queensland, but
Yeah.
New South Wales has been good to me. So I enjoy being down here. Um, yeah.
Benjamin, we often hear about the problems with Aboriginal communities. However, what positives can you tell us about the Aboriginal community? Oh, that's a good question, Benjamin. Thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, the positives are you have often in these communities, you have very humble people and you have beautiful kids who are just so magnetic and so extrovert too. Um, and I've been to a few Aboriginal communities and I've seen the kids and they won't leave you alone. They just want to play with you. They want to talk with you.
They're very
I
loving.
do a bit of magic for them when I go there. I do magic on the side when I can. Um, yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't, okay, next time I see you, maybe if I come to the Friedman conference this year, you have to do some magic for me.
Sure, sure. And so you got these beautiful kids.
Yeah.
And also the other thing too, Dave Price, Jacinta's father, who's a linguist, so he knows a lot about language, has said that these Aboriginal kids are the most linguistically talented kids in the world.
Mm.
So, and you and I both know as bilingual the power in that. And so you've got these
Yes.
kids who are bilingual, trilingual, can know four languages. So I would like to see that harnessed. So to answer the other question, in these communities, you've got beautiful people, and certainly like every community, you've got some bad characters, but you've got a lot of beautiful, humble people there as well.
Humility is very attractive. Our friend Dean McRae asks, how do you feel about the Adam Goods saga?
Okay, look, I've written about this before. First of all, I don't think Adam was the big culprit here. I think the media played it up a lot.
Okay.
Now, I don't agree that the young girl was a racist, and you'll get people say, "Oh, but ape is a racist term for Aboriginal people." Blah blah blah. At one time it may have been used in a
You give
racist
them
way.
power.
I've been with Aboriginal people before who will say things like "monkey see, monkey do." Okay, now that's not being racist because they're Aboriginal
Definitely
people.
not.
So I think it was something where um, the media played it up a lot, and Adam's not totally to blame for that.
Mm.
Um, and
Why is the circle?
sorry,
Sorry, were you done? Sorry.
I was just saying, when he got booed, I don't believe that was racially
Mm.
motivated at all. You know, a lot of good sports people get booed, and he should wear that as a badge of honor. You know, he's a lot better than the people who booed him. So
Yes. So Adam asks, why is the so-called gap getting wider? Indigenous funding is at 30 billion, 30,000 million each year. This money goes to the Aboriginal royalty, not to people who need it.
okay. Quick answer. We talk about the gap, meaning the gap between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal people. There's
Sure.
another gap which we don't talk about, and which I've spoken about, and that is what I call the internal gap or the within gap. So, if you look at the Aboriginal population, within that population, I've already said this, you've got people like me who are doing quite well. You know, live in a nice home, know where our next meals are coming from, and then right at the other end of the spectrum, you got the people living in absolute poverty, you know, bad situations. So you've got that gap between people like myself and people who are doing very poorly, and that's the gap we should be focusing on. So we don't shouldn't just lump all Aboriginal people together and say they're all disadvantaged. We should be focusing on the internal or the within gap, um, and directing resources at those Indigenous people who are suffering most, who are most disadvantaged, who are poorest. Does that make sense?
That makes sense to me. Yeah, I'm sure
Rather
Adam
than
appreciates
than
the
throwing
effort.
at anything and everything that's Aboriginal, direct the funds and resources to the most disadvantaged Aboriginal
Mm.
people.
By the way, the example of racism is this.
Oh, yeah. If you want it to be, you know, when I was a kid, that, you know, that or whatever was
Okay. That means
uh,
okay.
you know, quite a common symbol. But
Hmm.
for the race hound, the one who wants to always be offended, they can see racism around every corner and under every rock. They can see it
Yeah,
everywhere.
I know,
Yeah.
it's funny. They live like sad, lonely
It
lives.
makes them feel good.
Anthony, it does. Where on the oppression line do you fall because you're Aboriginal in heritage but right-leaning politically? LOL.
Yeah. So where on the oppression line do I fall? Well,
Yeah, how oppressed.
um, I'm not oppressed at all. Is that the question that they're trying to? They want to know how oppressed I am.
I think
I'm,
he's being partly funny, but I think he's. I don't think he's trying to be a dick. I think he genuinely means like, where are you on the spectrum? I think politically, he must not have heard you earlier when you already answered it.
yeah. I personally am not impressed, not oppressed. Sorry,
Yeah.
and those Aboriginal people, activists, blacktivists, whatever you want to call them, who claim they are suffering because of Australia Day, yet
Mm,
they live in a nice home or whatever, they are not oppressed. They're pretending to be oppressed.
yeah, that's funny. I'm not actually unemployed, but okay. Sorry, I just think it's funny that they're attacking me. Okay, hang on. We'll make this the last question, and then I'll let you go
Okay.
if you're good with that. I've been really thankful for your candor. Thank you. Peace. Oh, so that's not even to you. But
That,
my friend Dean texted me and he said for me to ask you about the UTS students.
oh, okay. Yeah, I mean that was a funny one. And I think they got freed, didn't they? So that
I'm
was a
not
few
sure.
years
I don't
ago.
know about.
Yeah, and look, those it was three young students. They didn't do anything wrong. Things got blown out of proportion. Um, so yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. I would like to continue, to be honest. And usually I go for about like an hour and 15, 20 minutes. But we did start a little earlier today, which I'm glad because there is another show after mine and I don't want to cut into their time because I'm a respectful person. So thank you so much for coming on. Did you enjoy it? Were the questions okay?
It did. Me gusta mucho. Gracias por la conversación.
Muy bien, hablas muy bien. Estoy muy impresionada.
I enjoyed it very much. Thank you very much. And
I really appreciate you coming on.
I hope your viewers get something from it.
Oh, I'm sure they do. They will. Because you're very educational and you're very humble. It's refreshing. I really like it.
Okay. Thank you.
No worries. Just go to Leave Studio if you want to get out of it.
Okay then. How do I leave studio?
So just at the very bottom, on the bottom right.
Oh, leave studio. Okay. Well, I'm going now. Goodbye.
Bye. Thank you so much. The only reason I had him leave first, usually I talk to them after. Thanks, Fatnik. He's a very good guest. Thanks, guys, for contributing and asking questions. I was going to say thank you to everyone who's been wishing my family well, because it has been a very rough time, hence the brown hair. So, yeah, and thanks, Neil, for all the compliments with my hair, you dickhead. But yeah, I just wanted to thank everyone for their prayers and for everything that, yeah, I just really appreciate it. It's been really good. Yes, exactly, Margaret. Great to hear from a non-victimized Aboriginal. This is why we need to support these people. We need people like Jacinta Price, and we need people like Anthony Dillon, because these are great examples of successful Aboriginals who are functioning fabulously in this genocide society. So anyway, can we follow? Yeah, so just I'll add, after this video finishes, I'll add all of his information in the description box below. But he's a great guest, and I certainly want to have him on again. Margaret, I made you a moderator, man. You're a moderator. All right, I'll take you off again. Anyway, guys, so XYZ is on, so you'd better leave and go watch XYZ now. Remove moderator. Okay, I'm going to now refresh it. And I'm going to make you a moderator again. Write hello or something. Hang on, so I'm going to add you as moderator again. Add moderator. Okay. Neil, can you piss off? Like, Wednesdays has been mine for the longest time. Like, I had it first. You can thank Daisy Cousins for the shout outs. That's how I found you. Yeah, Daisy Cousins does give me shout outs. She's so nice. I really like her. But anyway, she's good. I'm going to meet up with her soon. But anyway, yeah. So guys, XYZ is on. I'm out, and enjoy the show. Oh, that's not what I meant to click. That's the one I meant to click. All right, bye guys. Well, yeah, watch XYZ. It's exactly 9:30. End broadcast.